call this town work session, this town board meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item on the agenda is we're going to set a couple of hearings. Meg, you want to start us off?
Whereas pursuant to a recommendation from the Community Preservation Fund Advisory Board, the town board is desirous of purchasing the Liberty property at a 50% partner with the county or a county of Suffolk for passive recreation use. Now therefore be it resolved that the town board of the town of Shelter Island hereby sets a public hearing for October 18th, 2022 at 6:10 p.m. prevailing time on the potential fee title acquisition with the county of Suffolk as a 50% partner of 9.6 plus or minus acres located on the south side of Ram Island Road, Shelter Island, New York, more specifically identified as Suffolk County Tax Map, number District 700-Section 4-Block 1-Lot 7. And be it further resolved that the total purchase price of the subject parcel is $1 million and that the town's contribution will be $500,000 to be paid with community preservation funds. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Whereas the town board established the Community Housing Fund, the CHF, to serve as a repository for monies to be used exclusively for the community housing opportunities. And whereas there is a referendum on the ballot for November 8th, 2022, to ask residents to approve a 0.5% transfer tax. Whereas the purpose of the referendum is to create a continuous funding stream to be borne exclusively by newcomers to the town on a one-time basis at a time of purchasing a home and not current residents through property taxes. Whereas in order to expend any monies from the CHF, a community housing plan is required to be adopted. Whereas the town board created a community housing fund advisory board to work with the public and a consultant to develop such a plan. Whereas the CHFAB has completed the plan and pursuant to the town law section 64-K 7 small a, the plan must be adopted as a local law and made an element of the town's comprehensive plan, which is currently being updated. And now therefore be it resolved that the town board of the town of Shelter Island hereby sets a hearing on October 18th, 2022 at 6:13 p.m. prevailing time for all interested persons to be heard in favor of and on the adoption of the town of Shelter Island's community housing plan. So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Be resolved that the town board hereby calls for a public hearing to be held at 6:15 p.m. prevailing time on the 18th day of October, 2022 in the Shelter Island Town Hall, Shelter Island, New York, for all interested persons to be heard in favor of or opposition to a proposed use of funds for the Water Quality Initiative to pay 2022 annual dues to the Peconic Estuary Partnership. To wit, the supervisor hereby is hereby authorized to expend the amount of $8,925 from the Water Quality Initiative funds from the Community Preservation Fund account for the payment of the annual dues to the Peconic Estuary Partnership. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Be it resolved that Don Harris is hereby appointed to serve as a recreation/fit aide for the year 2022 at the rate of $17 per hour. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Whereas there exist certain stake and pulley system moorings located on or about the Daniel Lord Road landing property. Whereas ownership of the specific land where the stake and pulleys are located is currently in dispute with an adjoining neighbor. Whereas the town seeks to voluntarily move said moorings until the dispute is resolved. And now therefore be it resolved that pursuant to section 90-5M of the Town Code of the Town Board of the Town of Shelter Island hereby sets a public hearing for October 18th, 2022 at 6:28 p.m. prevailing time for a relocation hearing in connection with the following stake and pulley moorings: W-3417, W-3285, W-3007, W-2593, and W-3375. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Whereas William Cummings and Bernd Heiberg, 70, of 10 Thompson Road have petitioned the town of Shelter Island for a wetlands permit to reconstruct the existing retaining walls, purpose a walking path with stairs, and propose a dock facility. Be it resolved that pursuant to section 129-7 of the Code of the Town of Shelter Island, a public hearing will be held at 6:17 p.m. prevailing time on the 18th day of October 2022 for all interested persons to be heard in favor of or in opposition to the proposed construction. So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Be it resolved that the supervisor is hereby authorized and directed to expend the sum of $1,274 from the A1220.491 supervisor contracts account to Williamson Law Book Company, 790 Canning Parkway, Victor, New York, for the accounting budget software support contract for the period October 1st, 2022 to September 30th, 2023. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Whereas Michael and Janine Derby have applied for a rebate from the town of Shelter Island under Chapter 88 of the Shelter Island Town Code to install a low-nitrogen sanitary system for property located at 29 Baldwin Road, Shelter Island, New York. And whereas the Water Quality Improvement Advisory Board has reviewed the project and recommended a conditional rebate of up to $6,000 be awarded. Now therefore be it resolved that the town board hereby adopts the findings of the WQIAB and approves the applicant for a conditional rebate of up to $6,000 in eligible costs upon completion of the project and subject to the applicant's compliance with and completion of all terms and conditions of the conditional rebate agreement. And be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution shall be given to the Water Quality Improvement Advisory Board and the Building Department. So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
I abstain.
Oh, okay. So we have a majority.
Do you want me to read the
Okay.
next one?
We do.
Yeah,
Okay.
Oh, you abstain from the next one or from that one?
both of them. They're WQI.
Okay.
So whereas Alec and Buffy Sash have applied for a rebate from the town of Shelter Island under Chapter 88 of the Shelter Island Town Code to install a low-nitrogen sanitary system for property located at 5 Bay Avenue, Shelter Island, New York. And whereas the Water Quality Improvement Advisory Board has reviewed the project and recommended a conditional rebate of up to $8,000 to be awarded. Now therefore be it resolved that the town board hereby adopts the findings of the WQIAB and approves the applicant for a conditional rebate of up to $8,000 in eligible costs upon completion of the project and subject to the applicant's completion with and completion of all terms and conditions of the conditional rebate agreement. And be it further resolved that a copy of this resolution shall be given to the Water Quality Improvement Advisory Board and the Building Department. So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye. Whereas sealed bids were received by the town clerk's office until 3 p.m. on September 15th, 2022, for the installation of epoxy/quartz flooring for the police department. And whereas Hoffman Floor Covering Corporation of 2 Commerce Drive, Farmingdale, New York, 11735, presented a bid in the amount of $24,700. And whereas Hoffman Floor Covering Corp. Was the sole bidder. And whereas said bidder has been reviewed by the Commissioner of Public Works, Brian Sherman, and the town board, and they have recommended this bid to be awarded. Now therefore be it resolved that said bid is hereby awarded to Hoffman Floor Covering Corporation for the amount of $24,700. So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Whereas Mary Ellen Adapetro, Louise Clark, Betty Fogarty, Gina Kraus, Lisa Shore, Linda Springer, Julie O'Neill Bliss, and Ginny Gibbs have requested permission to hold the 23rd annual 5K run walk on Shelter Island on Saturday, October 15th at 11 a.m. And whereas the application fee of $100 and the compliance fee of $100 have been submitted, and whereas said application has been referred to the police department and the highway department for recommendations, and whereas the police department is prepared to assist with the event as they have done in the past, and whereas the highway department reported that as in the past, the highway department will coordinate any details with the racing committee. If there are any markings on the street, it must be washable, and any signage removed immediately after the race. And whereas pursuant to section 33-2B2, town board has determined that a proposed 5K run walk will benefit the town, and no fees will be required for police and highway costs associated with the event. Now therefore be it resolved that said request is hereby approved, subject to the following recommendations of the highway department. If there are any markings on this street, it must be washable, and any signs removed immediately after the race. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Whereas the New York State Department of Taxation and Finance has issued a notice of vendor collection credit to the town of Shelter Island for the period ending August 31st, 2022, in the amount of $163.11. Now therefore be it resolved that the supervisor is hereby authorized and directed to transfer the sum of $163.11 from the trust and agency account to the general account. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Whereas, in connection with the town board's consideration of the proposed Shelter Island Center Municipal Wastewater Treatment System, SECRA review is necessary. Whereas the town board is desirous of retaining P.W. Grosser Consulting Incorporated to conduct same, and now therefore be it resolved that the town board hereby authorizes the town supervisor to enter into a contract with P.W. Grosser Consulting Incorporated to conduct a SECRA review of the proposed Shelter Island Center Municipal Wastewater Treatment System at the rate schedule reflected in the September 19th, 2022 PWGC Municipal Wastewater Treatment System proposal. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
So it's the same one then? It's-
No.
Okay, all
It's
right.
a general.
Right, whereas certain actions by the town board and the town officials require environmental review pursuant to SECRA, whereas the town board is desirous to retain the services of an environmental expert to conduct said SECRA reviews on an ad-need basis, and whereas PW Grosser Consulting Incorporated is such an expert, and know therefore be it resolved that the town board hereby authorizes the town supervisor to enter into a general contract with P.W. Grosser Consulting Incorporated to conduct a SECRA reviews as needed at the rate scheduled reflected in the September 19th, 2022 general consultation PWGC proposal. So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Whereas Sherman Engineering and Consulting on July 7th,
Wait,
20.
are we, is this one after? Okay,
Which one?
for this one.
48 Lake Drive?
Oh. It hadn't referenced the public.
It doesn't reference the public hearing,
Okay.
so we'll wait.
Okay, the next is budget transfers and modifications. I have a list of 13 transfers for a total of $34,910, which are available in the clerk's office. Motion that we transfer these.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Be it resolved that 2022 general claims numbered 1410 through 1534 in the amount of $123,482.22. 2022 highway claims 160 through 174 in the amount of $128,086.11. 2022 community preservation claim number 11 in the amount of $266.55 are hereby approved for payment as audited, and the supervisor and/or any town board members hereby authorized and directed to sign the approval for payment of same. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I have one more.
Okay.
This was a late entrance one. This was setting the hearing for the community development block grant funds. So whereas the town of Shelter Island is a member of the Suffolk County Community Development Consortium, and whereas the town of Shelter Island expects to receive approximately $13,570 in the federal community development block grant funds in 2023, now therefore be it resolved that a public hearing will be held on the 18th day of October 2022 at 6:20 p.m. prevailing time in the Shelter Island Town Hall, Shelter Island, New York, for all interested residents to express citizen views on local needs to be met with these funds. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Stephen, you have any ready, or we start the public hearings?
Start the public hearings.
Okay, at this time, we're going to recess the meeting and open a public hearing addressing Chapter 133-32H. The hearing is to use WQI funds to pay for the engineering of wastewater treatment system. Somebody going to read that? Somebody have,
I can, but Dottie said she was.
look in the back and see if there's a sum.
No, the 130,
This is here.
it's wrong.
This one is the zoning one.
This is just chapter 133-32-H, which is the zoning change.
The ones?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
separate from the
Zoning, it's
All right, so let's do the 133-32H first.
It's the summary of the proposed law here, so it's one thing.
Just summary.
Right, no, we don't have it.
Well, I mean, this has whereas the public hearing was duly held, but it hasn't been held, we're holding it now, so
Okay, so I'm just gonna read from,
it's not even on here.
Want to just raise that then?
While you're looking for
Why
that
don't we
exact
just-
wording,
all right,
let's
just-
start with the summary.
Yeah, that's what we'll do here.
Yeah, so the purpose of this local law is to address the practical difficulties facing residents who procure a variance or special permit and face the daunting task of procuring a building permit a year therefrom, due to delays outside their control stemming from professional service and governmental backlogs and more stringent regulations. A 2-year period of expiration would serve to ameliorate such a circumstance and alleviate the necessity of seeking an extension from the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Okay, this came from, directly from the zoning board. They asked us if we can extend the approval from 1 year to 2 for just those reasons, that it takes that long sometimes to get all the permits in place to start the project, and they don't feel it fair that 1 year is not enough, time that people have to start from scratch. So we'll open this hearing if anybody has any questions or concerns on it. Nobody in the audience, anybody in Zoom?
Simply that one factor, extending the time from 1 year to 2 years, that's it, that's the only change.
Yeah. Okay. All right, we're going to close that hearing and open the hearing on the WQI funds to pay for engineering of wastewater treatment system.
we're doing all the public hearings.
Yes.
You have that one yet?
Yes, one is good. So you all set for me to read it?
Please.
A local law entitled, a local law amending chapter 133, titled zoning.
That one we just did.
Oh, you read that?
We did that one.
Yes, so now we're on to the use of WQI funds.
Town board hereby calls for a public hearing for the purpose of determining whether to utilize community preservation water quality improvement funds for the costs associated with the engineering and permitting of the proposed Center Municipal Wastewater Project.
That's us.
Okay, we'll open this up to the public. Come up and identify yourself, please.
Good evening, Mr. Supervisor, members of the town board. My name is Bob DeLuca, and I serve as president of Roof of the East End. I just a couple of thoughts to offer you on this. First, I want to thank the board for its continued efforts to work on water quality. Obviously, it's something many of us been working on for a long time. And when it comes to the use of the community preservation funds, some of us have been at this since the early 1990s. And so as more funding gets used for more capital projects and things on the water quality side, we're just trying to come to as many town boards as we can and offer some thoughts. What's kind of nice about Shelter Island is you actually have a pretty simple 2-part test to look at here. The first is whether or not the project you're proposing, and this is in your code 5033, whether it's consistent with the projects deemed okay by the CPF for this. And of course, I think this one is. It's planning, design, construction for the enlargement, extension, or alteration of wastewater treatment facility. I think that's an easy one. The second test is a little more interesting, and I think important, and it probably relates to your review work that you mentioned with Paul Grosser's firm. There's essentially 12 criteria that are consistency criteria for your decision making with the use of these funds, and they're enumerated nicely in the code. And so if you go through them, there's a couple that I would just bring to your attention, which are relevant, I think, to this project. Obviously, it's the expenditure of a fair amount of money, and your use of what limited funds you have, you want to do as expeditiously as you can and as efficiently. So one of the ones I would ask you to look at, and again, I think some of these maybe could be directed to your environmental review, is your criteria A talks about the importance of protecting all water resources, right? So in a project like this where you have a centralized disposal site, you want to make sure that the surface waters around that site are adequately protected by the design that you have. So that's something we would ask you to take a look at. You're obviously working on the nitrogen and the groundwater, but the treated water, when it comes out of one location, near surface waters can be something of concern. Second issue I would say is that this is in item C, is that your expenditures are supposed to be prioritized in maximizing the amount of pollution removed for the dollars that you spend. Obviously, that makes sense. And one of the issues with treatment works is that they're not cheap. And so we would just ask you to take a look at that and see whether or not you're getting the best bang for the buck. Item F is consistency with one or more quality improvement plans. You probably should be taking a look at the Suffolk County Subwatershed Wastewater Plan and also the Peconic Estuary CCMP, one dealing more with surface water, one dealing more with wastewater. And I think if you can probably talk to the folks at the county and get some advice there, and I would just encourage that going forward. And then I think the final issue, and maybe one that's a concern to lots of folks, is that the primary purpose not be the accommodation of new growth, right? So there's always this concern, and it's been a concern as long as I've been at this. Any infrastructure, whether it's public water or whether it's public sewer, raises the issue about whether or not people along that sewer line or along that water line will come before a board or try to change the zoning in a way that that's not what you intend. And to the extent that you can protect against that, either by the way that you size the facility or the way that you design the facility or the technology, there are ways to do it. But the history of just kind of putting in pipes and hoping for the best, we probably passed that, and I would just ask you to take a look. And then finally, all of this needs to be certified by the town board. There's a compliance requirement in the code. And I think to the extent that you can enumerate those different specific items as well as the rest, those of us looking after this program would be very happy if you did that. And of course, I appreciate your time and consideration.
Thanks, Bob. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming over. Anybody else in the audience? Anybody else? Okay, we'll go right down the line. We'll start with Bill Darrow.
Good evening. Sorry, I can't be on video, but as you know, we submitted on behalf of Friends of Cockles Harbor a report from Dr. Gobler, who I think will be speaking, which raises a significant number of issues with the proposed wastewater treatment facility. It would seem that approving any more funds to the consultant with respect to this facility is premature until Dr. Gobler's issues and observations have been fully addressed. And so I would urge the board to do that and to give Dr. Gobler sufficient time, as everyone in the audience should know, and anyone who reads the Shelter Island Reporter, Dr. Gobler is the preeminent expert with respect to the waters around Long Island, and did his PhD work on Shelter Island. So there's probably no one who knows this topic better. So I would urge the board and the public at large to give him all the time necessary to understand his perspective. Thank you.
Okay, and just in response, I believe, Bill, the town attorney got in touch with you and Jan Sudol today to explain that we have a procedure for 3 minutes speaking time, and we've invited Dr. Gobler to attend our work session on Tuesday. He'll be the main item on the agenda. He can make his presentation then and take all the time that's needed to present it.
Great, thank you.
Okay. Dr. Gobler, you next. Gobler?
You're muted. We can't hear you if you're talking.
Yeah, sorry about that. Actually, I had to be given permission to speak. So I obviously, or thankfully, will be able to speak more on Tuesday. As you know, I was asked to look at the plan here for North Ferry Road, examined it. I'm not going to go right now into the background of my credentials. I'll just use my 3 minutes. But suffice to say, in looking at it, it looks like they're, first I'll just say, of course, I think it's the most important thing for Shelter Island, obviously, is mitigating nitrogen. And I really do applaud the board for taking many, many actions towards that front. And I think if you look at the trends in nitrogen and groundwater, everything possible needs to be done to mitigate that. So just in looking at this plan, I think one thing that had the most important thing maybe that came to mind is the idea that there may be other ways to address the nitrogen there on Main Street that may be more cost effective. And some of the ideas that I put forth are in the plan. I vetted those ideas through the Suffolk County Department of Health Services, and they seem to affirm the ideas that I had put forth with regards to permitting, and specifically addressing the wastewater on site for different locations. Beyond that, the other things outlined in the report is the potential effects On surface waters, this new plan directs all of the wastewater towards Gardner's Creek, which is a restricted water body and therefore highly sensitive to nitrogen loading. And even post-treatment, the levels of nitrogen that would be directed towards this creek would be much higher than what's in the creek. And there's a long history of Shelter Island having harmful algal blooms occur in restricted water bodies that is restricted with tidal circulation when they receive high levels of nitrogen. And I think, other things within the report are, how well water would be affected in the proximity of that plume, and also the specifics of the system that's been chosen, both with regards to its ability to handle high strength wastewater, and some of the information with regards to treatment for drinking water. In the most recent version of the report and the presentation in August is quite unclear. And I think there's some potential dangers with regards to contaminants that need to be understood. Sometimes when you're treating to remove contaminants, you can create what are known as secondary byproducts. And in doing so, that can actually create a problem that could be worse than the one that you're actually potentially treating for. But I think overall, again, we can talk about this Tuesday, but the biggest thing is I think there are other options that can be considered. So for the same amount of money, more nitrogen can be removed by considering alternative plans. And I'm eager to discuss those alternative actions with you next week.
Very good. Okay, thank you. And like I said, you're the main topic for Tuesday's agenda. So thank you. Peter Topping?
Yes, good evening, everyone. My name's Pete Topping. I'm the executive director and baykeeper of Peconic Baykeeper. I had the pleasure of meeting with Dr. Gobler last week to discuss some of his concerns, which are also a few concerns that I share, some of which he briefly outlined. I do agree, with Bob and all the environmental community. Shelter Island has an undeniable water quality issue. We're really happy to see work being done to this effect. But in looking at the plans and also in my conversations with Dr. Gobler, one of the biggest concerns for me as someone that works within the estuary is even a treated wastewater load from one area. If you move it to another area, even though you're reducing the levels of contaminants, you're still putting that onus on another area. So looking at these particular plans with that wastewater stream, that treated effluent potentially impacting an enclosed water body such as Gardner's Creek. These creeks are the canaries in the coal mine all throughout the Peconics, and we see it everywhere when they get too much nitrogen or nutrients are the first to go. So I would just ask that that the board not kind of rush into this as this is the solution. It's a solution to a problem, but I think if there are alternatives, be it IA systems with a variance or siting that maybe disperses the load elsewhere, I think these should be considered. And lastly, to echo Bob's point, I would also hate to see this be used as an excuse to foster more development, because even treating that load, more development will in fact increase that load over time just by virtue of having more people. So thank you for your consideration, and I look forward to hearing everyone's thoughts.
Thank you, Pete. Okay, anybody else in the Zoom audience? Okay, if there's no more comments on this, I'm going to adjourn that hearing and reconvene the Wilcox Waterways application. What do we have?
You don't have to read the notice on.
Right.
I don't think. Right.
What do we have?
I think in this one, it's just,
I don't think so, because it's just a read.
if anyone wants
It's
to
already been
speak and then This-
Why did we
No,
adjourn?
The notice needs to be read on this one.
Or does?
Oh, it's new?
Yeah,
All right, so yes, please read the notice.
Okay, on the application of Kirby Wilcox for Conrad Road to install a stake, mooring, and pulley system at a location designated as latitude 41.05268 degrees north and longitude minus 72.34215 degrees west.
Okay,
Thank you.
Jim?
Yeah, the WMAC met on August the 15th, looked at this application. The only problem with the application was the residency issue and the ownership. But since that time, we've been informed that the residency issue has been taken care of. The one brother has, taken care of that lease to the brother, so that person is a resident of Shelter Island. And by a vote of 5-0, that was approved. I couldn't barely hear that latitude and longitude, but I will read it because I don't know if we changed it slightly. It was for latitude 41.056.360 north, longitude 72.342093 degrees west.
thank you.
Okay. All right, just wanted to make sure.
Okay, so 5-0 from the WMAC. Any comments on this application? Okay, so we'll close that hearing and reconvene the hearing on the Slatterbeck dock application.
Want me to-
Why did we,
Yeah, well, Rob was present, Herman was present for this. DEC problem won't ever allow less than 24 inches of water. This is for the choke, that it can rub across the bottom. So what they do is they built a choke below the floating dock so that the floating dock is not rubbing against and scouring the seafloor. The dock complies with all town code in all respects. Code does not speak to the construction design, which is something that we might have to adhere to in the future. Southhold is changing its policy and behavior, not the code, to require 30 inches of water at low tide. No chalking to make it doable to that depth. By a vote of 6-0, and we had the sixth person join the vote, they all voted for it, with a lot of conversation about this for the future, but they just want to make sure that the town board does address this in the upcoming town code. Either establishes the 30-inch, 2.5-foot minimum requirement, or decides to go to a 24-inch requirement, which, was in our peer review, but correct. Right now, according to our town code, this is allowed, permissible. It's not something that is done frequently, but in areas that it has been done, Mr. Costello was present for this as well. And he talked about this is done in areas, excuse me, where floats are in extreme low waters. Okay, so.
that was getting my question to Rob was, how come, is this something new or just?
No, it's been around for a decade.
Rob, do you want to speak to it or?
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Jerry. Evening, everyone. Yeah, just to speak to this briefly, this is, it has become, it's otherwise a straightforward dock application as it meets all of the permit standards in the town code. But the question of the chalking had come up with the town, with the Waterways Committee with respect to whether this was something new, if this was going to change some sort of trend of dockage in the island, et cetera. So just in the way of very brief background, because there is a boulder offshore that's located in the area offshore that has the deepest water and also puts us closest to the adjoining neighbor. I've actually met with the WMAC, I think now 4 times dating back to May of 2021 about this dock, where we had come up with all different possible ideas about how we could sort of avoid the rock and, maybe we would be a little closer than we're supposed to be to the side yard, or maybe we should be a little farther out than the 100 foot. And I think the consensus of the WMAC was that they really wanted to see a proposal that conformed 100% to the town code, which is what we ended up coming up with. The only wrinkle to that was that it placed the dock, you can see the outside of the float is in 2.3 feet of water at low tide instead of 2.5 feet of water. And where the chalking policy came from was that, dating back now to the late 90s, the DEC, as you know, some members may recall, the DEC under different leadership at the time was sort of vacillated between different depth requirements. Sometimes it was 4 feet, it was 2.5 feet, it was, you know, you had to have a pile and pulley, it had to be seasonal. Eventually, the DEC settled on some official guidance policy that required 2.5 feet or 30 inches of water for a floating dock. But there were instances where folks would come up with something just shy of that. For example, 2.3 instead of 2.5. And even though there were other similar floating docks in the area, the DEC at that time would deny the application, and it would go to in front of an administrative law judge, and there would be challenges, and there was all of this basically nonsense over a couple inches of water. So the DEC sort of adopted this policy where if you were close to 2.5 feet of water, like if you're in the 2 to 2.5 foot range, which is what we are here, they would allow the floating dock as long as it was consistent with other docks in the area and there were no other reasons, navigation, et cetera, to deny it, even if you were a little less than 2.5 feet. And that's what's going on here. We've had a handful of these cases over the 10 or so years that they've had this policy in place. This is the first one I can think of in Shelter Island. But again, this dock is located along a shoreline where the board has permitted other very similar docks with very, you know, basically the identical parameters in terms of the 100-foot length from high water, et cetera. So we're not really, you know, reinventing the wheel here. There's just a structural wrinkle to this, to the extent that there's 2 boards that sit under the float. So that if there was an extraordinarily low tide event, like a lunar event, you know, during, you know, where the moon's closest, you know, to the earth or something like that. Because normally you'd have 2 to 2.5 feet of water under the float. But if the whole bay emptied out, for example, the float would not be able to fall all the way to the bottom. It would fall only to these so-called chocks, which is basically just like a frame that ties into these pilings. And the purpose of that, and I can read you this actually off of the DEC's permit condition, and then I'll stop talking and hand it back to you. If I can just find this quickly, chalk float. So it's a special condition number 12 of the DEC permit, which you all should have a copy of. And it states simply, to prevent disturbance to bottom sediments and the benthic community, the float shall be chalked a minimum of 2.5 feet above the bottom sediment during periods of low tide. So all that means is that, you know, it's their way of maintaining the so-called 2.5 foot depth minimum, even though we're very close to that. So we had some long discussions with the WMAC, and they basically just, you know, they acknowledged that we had, you know, followed their guidance and come up with a plan that met all the current code requirements. But they talked about the possibility, as Jim just relayed, that maybe the town should consider, you know, going forward some sort of minimum depth requirements for floating docks as well, as other local agencies do. Southampton and Southold both do, but there's no such limitation currently in the town's dock code. So that's a little more detailed explanation of what Jim was relaying, maybe more detailed than you were wanting, but I wanted to make sure that this, you know, you understood this is not something, you know, highly unusual or highly new, or anything I see is really, you know, changing where docks, you know, might be proposed in the town. But if you did go ahead with adopting some sort of code changes relating to minimum water depths. That also would not be terribly unusual thing for an agency to do.
So two other points, Rob, that one, number one, you volunteered to assist in the writing, or if you need any background material for the writing of the change of the code.
I did tell you that if you had questions about how other local agencies or municipalities regulate this stuff, we mentioned the Army Corps, has some depth requirements, as does the DEC. I don't think you want me to help write your code, but I'm certainly available to make you all aware of how some of these other agencies deal with some of these things if you're interested.
Okay, and the second thing is, I think the length of the dock was a big factor initially. We could have gone out to 120 and gone to pick up that extra 2.5 inches of water. That's all it is. You'd have to take the dock from 100 feet out very close to 124, 25 feet. And to put an extra 24, 25 feet onto the dock out there, they measured the pros and cons and the exceptions and lengthening the dock versus allowing the chalking. And I think that's why, plus the fact that they were well within the town code and they had followed every recommendation that the WMAC had provided for them. So that's why they got the vote that they did in 6-0.
Okay, sounds like a good solution. Any other comments on this? Okay, we're going to close that hearing.
Thank you.
And thank you, thanks very much. And reconvene the hearing, the wetlands application for 27 Dickerson Road. You have something on this?
That is,
Church?
No, we're reconvening.
yeah,
We don't have to read it?
No.
yeah, Townsend is scheduled to go before the committee on October
Right,
17th.
so we're gonna.
It was on the-
Adjourn it because we don't have the CAC report yet.
Correct. They didn't have a quorum on the
Right.
September 12th meeting. So that was true for Dickerson, and that was true for 11 Serpentine
I'll
Drive,
have to open that, then we can adjourn
52.
that one also.
Tut Hill Drive. They're all scheduled to go on October 17th.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna adjourn that one, and we'll reconvene 3 Oak Tree Lane. We adjourned this hearing to go over some things. We went over them at last week's work session. I think we addressed everything that we needed to address.
Yeah, I had one comment that I was on the phone today with Howard Johansson, so I just want to make sure that this has been complied with. You have all our recommendations. I think there were 7 of them, and they've all been addressed. But I just want to make sure that he wasn't unable to be here, so I wanted to. Oh, is he on? Okay. Use of the irrigation was not in the documents that we reviewed. And the failure of the bulkhead was noticed by the holes in the old bulkhead. So when he went down there and actually took some photographs, it appears that there's some depression in the old bulkhead. So, where they were recommending that partially that bulkhead be replaced, some of it is brand new to the right, to the north, some of it is brand new to the south. That is, in his mind, it looked like it was compromised enough that it needed to be addressed. So I know Matt Sherman said he'd take a look at it, back from that on
That would
that.
be a separate application.
Okay. And the other thing was the cistern indicated that it was for the pool top off only.
Mhm.
Irrigation must meet the town codes if it's being used for any other purpose other than the topping off the pool. That was his 2 concerns that he wanted expressed today. So he's online. Howard, if I haven't said that correctly, please feel free.
No, that sounds correct, Jim. Those are the 2 main items.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Matt?
Yeah, I can address this. Thank you very much. Matt Sherman, Sherman Engineering. I'm here on behalf of the property owners, Jill Brienza and Nick Daraviras. Real quick on the cisterns. We've got 2 cisterns that are on the plan that are proposed for this project. One is out by the road. It's 1,000 gallons, and it's to be filled with off-island potable water for refilling for topping off of the swimming pool. So that's that cistern that's out by the road. There is another cistern that is between the swimming pool and the house. It's outside of the regulated wetlands area, so it's more than 100 feet from the wetlands boundary. And that will be used only for establishing the new plantings. So the irrigation system, which will have to go through the regular irrigation regulations and applications and the information provided to the building department, will be used for the first 18 to 24 months is what the landscape architect is saying for the establishment of those new plantings. And then that irrigation system will be formally abandoned, and we'll do whatever needs to be done with the building department to properly document all of these things, just as with any other new cistern anywhere else on the island.
Yeah, and my comment, Matt, on that is the new vegetative plan behind the bulkhead and along that area, a lot of the grass has been eliminated and native plantings have been put in there. So it's a fairly substantial area.
Yeah.
I think if you didn't have that second cistern, by the way, keeping that alive for the first 12 to 18 months, especially with the amount of wind and salt water you get there and sun that you get there, could be an issue. So the fact that you're going to abandon it would be, and that water too is being trucked in?
Yes, it would be from an off-island source, exactly.
Okay.
I have a question. In the resolution, it addresses dewatering 3 times. First one says if dewatering is necessary for the footings, the dry well shall be installed prior therefore to recapture the water. Then it says there shall be no dewatering of the 1,000 gallon tank, and there shall be no dewatering of the gunite cistern. I thought we said there was no dewatering anyway.
There's no dewatering for a pool specifically in the code, but it's specific to a pool, like a swimming pool.
But we can
Because
make
there-
that.
Well, I mean, it's not totally practical to make no dewatering period, because for certain things, it may be necessary, depending on groundwater. Like certain sanitary systems, you may have to dig down into water, you may not have to de-water, but just because of the size of the tank, the dimensions of the tanks available. Sometimes footings, you might have to go deep enough to get stable. So, I mean, it's hard to ban dewatering completely, but there are mitigating features you can
Okay.
If
impose.
my memory serves me correct, it had to do with the footings
Yeah.
that sometimes putting footings in is a fairly substantial house, so, yeah. You may hit water.
Yes. Okay, that's all I had. Anybody else have anything?
Yeah, so do we need a note in here that they have to get an initial irrigation system permit for that temporary usage? Is that a thing?
Yeah, they have to get a permit.
In code. Should we put it in the, but should we put it in the, or do we not need to because it's code?
I think it's redundant.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Matt, did you address the bulkhead yet?
No, not yet. No, not yet. I'm sorry. What we're going to do is we're going to look at it, evaluate it. We're going to have to go to the DEC for a permit before we come to the town board. So we'll handle that with a separate permit application.
Do we know what the footage is, Matt? I know there's new bulkhead to the right and left, but the part that's older, what's a approximate length?
I don't have that. I don't have that information, no.
All right.
Again, we're trying to keep them as 2 completely separate projects, 2 separate permitting processes. We didn't want to delay or muddy the issue with one with the other.
Yeah, I just didn't want to see you take a tremendous effort to replant those native plants in front of that older bulkhead, and a year or 2 later have to come down and replace it and trample all that stuff that you just planted. So it made no sense to me. So that's why I know there's a lot of money involved in the rebuilding of this new house, but now is the time to do it if it has to be done.
Yeah, and we appreciate that, and we're going to start looking at that as soon as we're done with this permitting process. We've already talked to a couple of contractors to give us some evaluations. I'll be looking at it. So we're certainly going to be evaluating that and doing what needs to be done to protect the property.
Okay, any other comments or questions on this one?
We're going to make it a condition that he filed for an application for a bulkhead within a year, 2 years, something in there, so you keep them honest about securing that, or?
I mean, if they want to keep their property, they'll apply for a bulkhead on their own.
Otherwise, it's gonna wash out.
Was it, Howard, was this a recommendation from you or from the CAC?
Well, I had walked the property with the owner, and there's holes along the old wooden bulkhead. And then if you look at the photos that were submitted, photo number 3, you can actually see a depression in that area. And I think that should be reconciled before the building goes ahead, because if that goes away, your building's it's just gonna go over to the Shell Beach and then eventually into the West Neck. So I think the bulkhead is a requirement for any other construction, if it's required. And I'm not saying, I'm not an expert on it, but I think maybe, the bulkhead expert should look at that and inform us.
Unless you want to send Joe down there to take a look at that. I would go down with Joe and meet him down there to take a look at that. I mean, Joe's not an expert either, but obviously he can make some type of judgment there.
I mean, I think it's a private property.
Yeah, okay.
If they want to keep their yard, they'll fix their bulkhead. The timing of when and how they do it is kind of up to them. If they want to pay to redo their plantings twice, I think that's on them. That's my, I mean, it's their property, they can choose.
Yeah. All right, we just looked at the planning board's recommendation, and they just want to make sure it stays at the same height.
It appears that the existing bulkhead rises 3 inches to 6 inches above the existing grade. This should be maintained to stop any surface water storage in the bay.
Okay. Yeah.
So I don't know that, Stephen, we should make this a condition.
No, it was just something that I drew out.
That's what I'm just, I don't think,
The only, the flip side to it is you could say, yeah, it's, his property, if it goes into the water, goes into the water, but then again, that contaminates.
Yeah, right.
And there's stuff going into the water that we don't want going.
Right.
So you do have, jurisdiction, vis-a-vis, and I think there's a nexus here. If you want to say like within 2 years, or you must apply for a bulkhead permit within 6 months, within a year. So at least you have that in there, and let's take it from there.
Yeah, I did find another section here. The bulkhead is in good condition with vinyl sheeting, therefore recently replaced. We observed 3 erosion control groins emanating from the bulkhead. It is interesting to note that the most westerly one, walled with vinyl, was doing a good job retaining the beach sand. However, the 2 easterly older wooden ones with gaps were performing much more poorly in retaining the beach. A timeline for the other 2's replacement should be presented to ensure sections do not break off and become navigation hazards.
Yeah, but those are jetties, not bulkhead.
Right.
Those are jetties, though.
Yeah. So you want to put in, within 2 years?
See, if you go one of 2 ways, you could say you must apply for a bulkhead, for a bulkhead permit within 6 months, within a year, and then you can add, and shall procure same within like 2 years or something, whatever's reasonable. I don't know what the processing time is here for a bulkhead permit out.
I would say you have to apply for it within a certain amount of time, and if they get it, they have to adhere to, the time frame is that they can use it.
Matt, you have any suggestions?
Yeah, that's fine. I would say apply to the town within a year, because it's a bulkhead repair. It's not a new bulkhead, so I don't see we're going to get a lot of friction or pushback from the DEC. But they are glacially slow. So, I like to have it be a reasonable amount of time period that we can evaluate it, do the design for the repair, apply to them, get a permit, and then put in an application to the town. So a year to me seems to be, a good, fair time frame, and that even gives us a little bit of a cushion. And keep in mind too, this project isn't going to start and finish in a year. So they won't be putting that new planting in within a year. So I think that gives us plenty of time.
I was just going to say that. I remember you saying that this project would probably be 18 months or so, because I was concerned about getting the construction done by Memorial Day of next year, minimize the problem going out on Oak Tree Lane, but that's not going to happen.
No.
Hopefully the house is framed out and on its way, but it's going to be still an issue. But we've resolved the parking issue as well as we possibly can.
Okay, so we're going to add a 26th condition is,
Stephen's writing it right now.
okay, just the general concept is bulkhead repair application must be made within 12 months.
Yeah, that's fine.
That was, yeah.
That's
Well, I mean,
reasonable.
that's my summary of it. You write what you have.
Yeah, you write it.
No, I like it. We'll make an attorney out of you yet, Jerry.
We won't. Okay, anybody else want to talk
Which one
about?
of you is writing it? Because I'm going to be
He is.
reading this one. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Anybody else have any comments on this one?
I'll text it to you. My handwriting's terrible.
All right, so we can close that hearing. And we have to open the hearing. Now, we're going to open and adjourn it, but we still have to open it on the 11 Serpentine Drive, which is Crescent Beach LLC. Yep. Linda, do you have a notice on this one?
Oh, sorry. On the application of Crescent Beach LLC, in care of Bennett and Reed LLP, 11 Serpentine Drive for a wetlands permit to develop a new single-family residence, accessory pool, pool house, and related improvements.
On the agenda for October 7th.
Okay, it's because the CAC hasn't met to discuss it?
Right.
No, also, this one, it's 11 Serpentine, right?
Yes.
There was an issue with the notice in the paper. The mailing that went out had the correct verbiage, that it was wetlands and special permit.
Right.
The posting, no, but the posting on the property had the correct language. The legal notice put in the paper neglected to have special permit.
Okay.
So instead of saying, oh, now you have no jurisdiction, and to start all over and mail again, I suggested that we open the hearing,
Right.
adjourn it, give the public notice some time to get through its process,
Okay,
and then just set it for the next public hearing,
good.
public meeting date for the hearing. And
And so we're going to adjourn that one, and we're going to open the hearing on 52 Tut Hill Drive.
Mhm.
Do you have this one?
It's Church. Okay. Yep. On the application of Stanley Church, 52 Tuthill Drive, for a wetlands permit to enclose existing porch area to be a living space.
Anybody here for the representing?
Hi, this is Kristen Church here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. As she noted, we are seeking a wetlands approval on enclosing an existing covered porch area to be a living space. This current breezeway space sits directly below an existing second floor bedroom. The additional living space would stay within the current footprint of the property. We did go through the wetlands application process last year and received approval. However, we made a small change to the layout, which shifted a wall in front to about approximately 3 feet closer to the front door so that we could frame the front door aesthetically evenly. So that required us to go through a new wetlands application. This still doesn't change the footprint of the house, and so that's the only small change to the original application that was approved. So happy to answer any questions.
They're going to record.
No, it's on for this one.
I have the planning board one.
Okay, planning board?
Yeah. Do you want me to?
Yeah, please.
Have you got it, Megan?
No, if you have it, go.
I got
And,
it.
and the CAC is on the agenda for the next meeting.
Yeah, sure.
Correct.
Okay,
The October 17th.
okay, so let's hear the planning board.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, they just noted the applicant has received multiple ZBA approvals, allowing for the variance, clarification. The actual square footage should be obtained, because I guess, I just read this whole sentence. So appeal number 08-1991 allowed for variance, allowing the dwelling to be placed 25 feet from Tuttle Drive, despite the actual built distance of 24 feet 4 inches. And then number 08-2022 allows for a 34-foot front yard setback and a special permit for the new plus or minus 271 square foot addition. The application notes the addition is 314 square feet, so clarification of the actual square footage should be obtained. I can stop there if you've got that number.
Kristen, are you you know the difference between what was applied for and what's there?
No.
No.
Okay.
Okay. All right, well, we're gonna have to
Okay.
adjourn this anyways, but, so we can work on that one. Let's see. The enclosure of the existing covered, this is recommendations in conclusion. The enclosure of the existing covered patio should have no effect to the existing stormwater management on the property and minimal to no effect on the wetlands. The increase in living space would be covered by the proposed IA OWTS system. The new IA sanitary system is a big improvement to the existing property, and the town board should require its installation by a specific date. We recommend that the town preclude staging or storing of materials or vehicles in the regulated wetlands during construction. We recommend the town takes the applicant at their word that they're going to leave the existing slab intact and limit the design to working within that parameter, namely that, to quote the applicant, no earth will be disturbed to create runoff, and therefore preclude the removing the existing slab without additional town wetlands permits or ZBA approval. And they recommended the approval of this application.
Okay, so we have the planning board approval, and we're waiting for the CAC to meet to discuss it. So anybody in the audience want to talk about this?
Just remind her the date in case she wants to come to
Okay,
the
so what's the
meeting.
CAC meeting?
October 17th, it's a Monday night,
Kristen, that's when the CAC will discuss it if you want to attend that meeting.
7:30 meeting.
October 17?
Yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So we're going to adjourn that hearing. And we're going to, thank you. We're going to reopen the town board meeting to act on,
Okay, so we're going to act on Wilcox Slaughterbeck,
right?
3 Oak Tree Lane, Chapter 133-32,
Right.
and then we also, we put Sing on hold. We can finish that one.
So let's finish. Wait, we have to have a hearing on Sing?
No, we already did.
Okay.
It's just
okay.
that the word, we didn't have the quite correct wording. I've got
Okay.
that now. So
Okay.
Meg, you do Wilcox, Jim, you do Slaughterbeck, and I've got the other three because I've correct.
All right,
Do
Andy.
you have them?
See,
Yes.
yes.
Thanks to Wilcox.
Whereas Kirby Wilcox, 4 Conrad, has petitioned the town of Shelter Island for permission to install a stake mooring and pulley system designated as latitude 41.056360 degrees north, longitude 72.342093 degrees west. Now therefore, whereas a public hearing was duly held on the 27th day of September 2022, for all interested persons to be heard in favor of or opposition, now therefore be it resolved that the town clerk is hereby authorized to issue a permit for the aforementioned installation. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
I'm looking for Slaughterbeck.
I have Slaughterbeck, I think.
I got it right here. Whereas Oscar Slaughterbeck and Carolyn Ritter, 43 Winthrop Road, had petitioned the town of Shelter Island for permission to construct a fixed timber dock consisting of 4 feet by 98-foot fixed catwalk, elevated minimum of 4 feet above grade of marsh, and constructed with open grate decking with 2 3-foot by 6-foot access steps and a 6-foot by 20-foot float secured by 4 10-inch diameter piles and choked to maintain a 2-foot elevation above the bottom. Now therefore, whereas a public hearing is being held on the 27th day of September 2022, all interested persons be heard in favor of or in opposition. Now therefore be it resolved, the town clerk is hereby authorized to issue a permit for the aforementioned installation. So moved.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Whereas the public hearing was duly held on the 27th day of September 2022 in the Shelter Island Town Hall, Shelter Island, New York, for all interested persons to be heard in favor of or in opposition to proposed local law entitled, a local law amending Chapter 133 entitled zoning. Be it resolved that local law number 10 of 2022 entitled zoning is hereby adopted as follows. A local law amending Chapter 133 entitled zoning to extend the period of expiration of variances and special permits from 1 to 2 years. Being enacted by the town board of the town of Shelter Island as follows. Section 1, legislative intent. The town board finds that a 1-year period of expiration for variances and special permits is too short, as logistical difficulties exist in both governmental and professional service capacities, which make it unlikely that the requisite building permit would be issued prior to expiration. The The town board has determined that an extension from 1 to 2 years is warranted in order to create sufficient time to satisfy the building permit application requirements. Section 2. Section 133-32H of the Shelter Island Code, Chapter 133 zoning is hereby amended to delete the stricken words and adding the underlying words as follows. That's 133-2, Zoning Board of Appeals. H, the grant of a variance or special permit by the Zoning Board of Appeals shall expire /1, insert 2 years, thereafter, unless a building permit is obtained in accordance therewith, unless the board's determination involves an interpretation as to the use of land, or unless the board stipulates a different time period. Section 3, authority. The proposed local law is enacted pursuant to Municipal Home Rule Law, Section 10, and in furtherance of Town Law, Section 267. Section 4, severability. If any section or subsection, paragraph, clause, phrase, or provision of this law shall be adjudged invalid or held unconstitutional by any court of competent jurisdiction, any judgment made thereby shall not affect the validity of this law as a whole or any part thereof, other than the part provision so adjudged to be invalid or unconstitutional. Section 5, effective date. This local law shall take effect upon the filing of the Secretary of State pursuant to municipal home rule law. So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Okay, so next we have Sing. Whereas a public hearing on the Sing Wetlands permit was duly held on the 7th day of September 2022 in the Shelter Island Town Hall, Shelter Island, New York. Whereas all interested persons were heard in favor or in opposition thereto. Whereas Sherman Engineering and Consulting, PA, on July 7th, 2022, submitted a wetlands permit application on behalf of Lucy Singh pursuant to Chapter 129 of the Town Code to legalize the rebuilding of a pre-existing non-conforming deck attached to a pre-existing dwelling located wholly within the vegetative buffer in place, but for steps which are 2 feet larger in width than what previously existed. Whereas the subject property is located at 48 Lake Drive, Shelter Island, New York, which is within the C residential zoning district with the Suffolk County Tax Map number of 0700-19-1-110. Whereas the shoreline is unhardened, whereas the mostly as-built deck is shown on the Sherman Engineering and Consulting PA site plan dated July 5th, 2022, whereas the applicant proposes to voluntarily install an IAOTWS system as mitigation, whereas the application was referred to the Planning Board and Conservation Advisory Council for recommendations, and recommendations have been submitted and considered, and whereas a New York State Department of Environmental Conservation permit has been issued for the subject project, permit number 1-4732-01138/001 dated January 13th, 2022. Whereas this board considered the proposed action at a public hearing pursuant to notice on September 7th, 2021, and whereas this board now wishes to render a decision on this wetlands application, now therefore be it resolved that this board hereby pursuant to SECRA determines that this is a type 2 action and therefore will not have a significant impact on the environment. And be it further resolved that the town board adopts the findings of the Planning Board and Conservation Advisory Council and concurs with the jurisdictions and mitigation measures offered in the subject application and at the hearing. Be it further resolved, the wetlands permit for the subject construction to be completed at 48 Lake Drive, Shelter Island, New York is hereby granted subject to the following conditions. 1, all construction shall be in full conformity with the Sherman Engineering and Consulting PA site plan dated July 5th, 2022, including the installation of the proposed IA system. 2, construction procedures and erosion controls, including the anchored installation and maintenance of silt fences during all stages of construction shall be required and be designed to prevent any runoff from disturbed ground into the wetlands areas. 3, soil disturbance should be minimized where possible. 4, stormwater management practices pursuant to Chapter 110 of the Town Code must be employed or if pre-existing approved by the building inspector. 5, the construction site must be cleaned of all trash and debris on an ongoing basis with a minimum once per week. 6, all construction materials and equipment shall be staged outside the regulated area. 7, parking of all construction and delivery vehicles shall be on the property to the extent reasonably possible. 8, no public street or public or private right-of-way may be obstructed or impaired during construction. 9, applicant must repair any damage to adjacent public road or street caused by construction vehicles to the satisfaction of the town highway superintendent. The project manager shall post a sign on the site with the cell phone number and shall address in a timely fashion neighborhood concerns regarding litter control, parking, noise, road conditions, and other impacts caused by the project. 11, noise control shall be pursuant to the town code. 12, the location of mitigation measures shall be examined by the building department prior to the start of work and periodically thereafter. 13, this permit shall only be valid for construction commencing within 2 years of the date of this approval. 14, the building inspector may halt construction for any violation of these restrictions or of the unified code. Finally, 15, upon completion of the work approved pursuant to this permit, along with the completion of any applicable conditions, the applicant must call for a final inspection and receive a written certificate of compliance from the building inspector. And be it further resolved that copies of this approval shall be filed with the building inspector. So,
Just 1 second.
I think you're on a different one. Yeah, that's it. It's,
This is the old Benny Novak house on Fresh Pond, by the way. And one of the things we can give it a thumbs up about, another IA system going in on Fresh Pond, which I think is a real positive.
Okay. So, do you have a second?
Second,
All
yeah.
those in favor?
Aye.
okay. All right, so now for the Menza wetlands permit. And what I'm going to do here is if we have like some of the same things, I will kind
I
of
would go
skip
over the
over them.
conditions.
Go over them?
That's-
Or read the conditions?
Yes, I mean.
Yes, okay. So whereas a public hearing on the Brienza wetlands permit was duly held on the 7th day of September 2022 and the September 27th, 2022 in the Shelter Island Town Hall, Shelter Island, New York, whereas all interested persons were heard in favor or in opposition thereto. Whereas Sherman Engineering and Consulting PA on July 15, 2022 submitted a wetlands permit application on behalf of Nicholas Deravirus and Jill Brienza pursuant to Chapter 129 of the Town Code to remove an existing 3,230 square foot existing dwelling located 61 feet from the wetlands boundary and 470 square foot of decking located 52 feet from the wetlands boundary. Pool 64 feet from the wetlands boundary, pool patio 72.7 feet from the wetlands boundary, pool house 76 feet from the wetlands boundary, and replacing with a new 4,402 square foot living area dwelling with 5,208 square feet of deck, 1,014 SFLA pool house, new pool, patio, and detached garage with 596 SFLA, all to be located outside the 75-foot vegetative buffer along with the installation of a new IA waste treatment system. Subject property is located at 3 Oak Tree Lane. It's in the Near Shore Overlay District. Property is hardened with the bulkhead. The proposed project, whereas the proposed project, after certain amendments, includes the removal of the following from the regulated area as shown on the Sherman Engineering and Consulting PA site plan dated July 12, 2022, portion of the dwelling, patio, pool, patio, and pool house. Whereas the project further includes maintaining, installation, or construction of the following in the regulated area shown on the site plan dated July 12, 2022. A new swimming pool with spa located 75 feet from the wetlands boundary. New deck partially within regulated area located 75 feet from the wetlands boundary. New dwelling partially within regulated area located 75 feet from the wetlands boundary. New 11,100 square foot plus or minus of turf grass lawn in vegetative buffer. New 20,700 square foot plus or minus of native non-turf vegetation in a vegetative buffer. The application was referred to the planning board, CAC, and the recommendations submitted and considered. There was a DEC permit, Department of Health Services permit, public hearing on September 7th and on September 27th. Let's see. So for the, be it further resolved that a wetlands permit for the above described work to be conducted for the property is hereby granted, subject to the following conditions. 1, all construction shall be in full conformity with Sherman Engineering and Consulting PA site plan dated July 12, 2022. Construction procedures and erosion controls, including the anchored installation and maintenance of silt fences during all stages of construction, shall be required and be designed to prevent any runoff from disturbed ground into the wetlands areas. 3, soil disturbance should be minimized where possible. 4, the subject pool shall include a salt cell or ozone disinfection system, and the pool filter shall be a cartridge filter. 5, there shall be no dewatering of the pool. 6, the subject pool shall utilize an automatic pool cover. 7, a plumbing leak detection and automatic shutoff device shall be installed. 8, if dewatering is necessary for the footings, a dry well shall be installed prior thereto to recapture the water. 9, there shall be no dewatering of the 1,000-gallon water tank. 10, stormwater management practices pursuant to Chapter 110 of the Town Code must be employed, or if pre-existing approved by the building inspector. 11, there shall be no dewatering of the gunite cistern. 12, there shall be no use of fertilizers for any vegetation located on the property. 13, construction site must be cleaned of all trash and debris on an ongoing basis with a minimum once per week. 14, all construction materials and equipment shall be staged outside the regulated area. 15, parking of all construction and delivery vehicles shall be on the property to the extent reasonably possible and will not inhibit traffic on or access to Oak Tree Lane. 16, no public street or public or private right-of-way may be obstructed or impaired during construction. 17, applicant must repair any damage to any adjacent public road or street caused by construction vehicles to the satisfaction of the town highway superintendent. 18, the project manager shall post a sign on the site with a cell phone number and shall address in a timely fashion neighbor concerns regarding litter control, parking, noise, road conditions, and other impacts caused by the project. 19, noise control shall be pursuant to the town code. 20, applicant shall install dark sky compliant lighting pursuant to the town code and all outdoor lighting pursuant to this project. 21, the location of mitigation measures shall be examined by the building department prior to the state of work and periodically thereafter. 22, the water well shall include a low flow pump, 5 gallons per minute. 23, this permit shall only be valid for construction commencing within 2 years of the date of this approval. 24, the building inspector may halt construction for any violations of these restrictions or of the unified code. 25, upon completion of the work approved pursuant to this permit, along with completion of any applicable conditions, the applicant must call for final inspection and receive a written certificate of compliance from the building inspector. And 26, within 6 months, a bulkhead repair permit application shall be filed with the town, and further said permit shall be procured within a year, and the bulkhead fully repaired within 2 years. If with diligent effort said timeframes cannot be met, then the town board, upon written request by the applicant, may extend said timeframes. Be it further resolved that copies of this approval shall be filed with the building inspector. So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
You have one more?
That's it.
That's it. Okay. Okay, we're gonna open the hearing to the public, open the meeting to the public, I'm sorry. Anybody, want to address anything? Any comments from the audience? Any comment from the Zoom audience or questions? Any questions from, the papers? Julia?
I have a question, Jerry. It's Julia. In the community housing plan, it says that this is a newcomer's tax and that it seems to indicate that people who already live on Shelter Island would never be subject to this tax.
That is accurate.
Well, no, if somebody in Shelter.
If someone lives here and buys another house, yes.
Yeah.
But it's not a real estate property tax.
Right.
It's,
Transferred.
yeah, it's a transfer tax in connection with the real estate transaction.
Correct.
It's newcomers and then also people who want to buy a second home.
Great. Thank you for clarifying.
Okay, anybody else? Julie?
Yes, she's good.
Okay, I'm gonna guess we're good.
I'm fine.
Thank you. Okay, if there's nobody else, I'm gonna make a motion that we adjourn.